This podcast is for you. Your co-hosts, Ben Dodge and Eric Huso at Effect Epic Consulting, believe that your potential is limitless. Tapping into this potential is how you can affect epic results in your life, relationships, and business. Welcome to the Principles of Epic Growth.
Good morning, brother.
How are we?
Oh, it's a beautiful day.
No, it's not. It's freezing.
It's a little cold, man.
Yeah, it was 43 degrees this morning.
Did you ride?
No.
I did.
Outside?
Yes. Well, here's the deal. So 2 days ago, actually on Monday, I was in California and riding on the PCH.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't count.
And that was just like paradise, right?
Yeah, that doesn't count.
And then I drove home, and then Tuesday I get on my bike, and I didn't have my leg warmers on, my toe warmers, and like I came back. You know how when you're like so cold, then you get in the shower, your toes
Everything
burn?
stings. Yeah.
So I'm like, I was an ice cube and burnt. Yeah. So then I pulled out the toe warmers, got the leg warmers out, got the beanie out, and it was a beautiful ride this morning.
Yeah, no, it wasn't, but thanks. Hey, so today, I'm really grateful for today's opportunity. This is a fantastic principle, the servant leadership, and to break it down and how we can apply it to our own lives. Like, I'm really excited. This is something I know you're personally super passionate about, and I think a really good example of it. So it'll be great to chit chat about servant leadership and what it really is, and why as a leadership model it's probably, you know, the best, if not the only thing that actually has long-lasting sustainable effects. It
really is the only model, right? So an analogy, we started talking about bikes. Let's talk about bikes.
I can talk bikes all day.
Yeah. When somebody says ride a bike, you know, you have a picture in your mind. Now, if somebody said, I ride a two-wheeled bicycle, you'd be like, don't all bikes have two wheels?
I mean, there are tricycles, but
they're not bicycles.
That's right.
Right? Bi meaning two. So a tricycle or a unicycle.
Touche.
Or you know, they're. And so to call something a two-wheeled bicycle would be duplicitous.
Yeah, it's redundant. Absolutely.
Right? And so this principle of servant leadership is in the same vein. Like, you can't be a leader in the true sense of leadership without being a servant leader. So calling it servant leadership in lots of ways is redundant. It is duplicitous. And so we want to talk about these core elements of leadership that are rooted in service that will help you be the most powerful, most influential leader that you can possibly be.
Yeah, I love it. So we want to break it down today and really just define what servant leadership is and what it's not. Because in defining what it's not, like, you'll see things like the authoritarian, you know, or dictatorship and that kind of stuff. There's different ways that you can think you're leading a group of people, or your own life for that matter. And you'll find that they're just completely ineffective unless it's the servant leadership model. So we want to discuss that and help you apply this with your family, with your marriage, kids, with your company, with your coworkers, with your football team, or, you know, whatever it is that you're associated with. You know, we got clients that are kind of all over. You know, they have a variety of associations, and so servant leadership is just the pure essence of real leadership. And so let's get into it.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about this principle is every single person, no matter your station in life, young or old, whatever position you have, your family, like all those examples you just shared, like, this principle is a principle that give you opportunities to make a difference, right? So one of the most if you're frustrated in your employment, like, say you work for somebody and you're like, man, if I was the boss, I would do it this way, and you just feel handcuffed, and you feel like there's nothing that I can't make a difference. Servant leadership will unleash you. It will free you from that self-imposed restriction that you've placed on yourself, thinking that I can't make a difference because I'm not the boss or I'm not the leader. Where this idea of servant leadership gives every single one of us, no matter our position, no matter our station in life, the opportunity to lead and to make a difference.
Yeah, I like it. So how would you define it? How would you define servant leadership?
Well, it's really hard to define. But I think in its essence, if you're a servant leader, then you are making a powerful, positive difference in the lives of the people that you touch. Like wherever you go, you are leaving a wake of good. You are creating opportunities for people to be more than they are, to be more than they were, and you're just going around making a huge difference, and it looks different in every circumstance, in every person, like because we all have unique circumstances, we all have gifts that we've cultivated, and we all have a unique gift that we can share with the world. And so it's hard to define, to say, this is what servant leadership is and this is what it looks like. It really looks different for me, for you, and for every person listening.
I agree. An application of it is certainly going to be different and varying. I guess the way to think about servant leadership is, if you're a servant leader, then you recognize the importance to help cultivate and build others around you to be better than they were the day before. Mm-hmm. They're a little freer, they're growing, they're wiser, they're happier, they're more autonomous. You're helping, in your leadership role, you're helping them, raise the bar in their own life in a billion different kinds of ways and topics. And in so doing, you're serving them and you're leading them to a better way. And this is absolutely business related. I mean, the way that sounds when I said it makes it sound like you're, this one-on-one life coach that you're trying to go and help people. That's not it. Servant leadership is helping those around you in your leadership role, helping those around you become better. And by so doing, your business becomes better. Your bottom line becomes better. The Good to Great, right, by Jim Collins. I love that book. But that Good to Great, like it's those leaders that were the good to great leaders, the companies that went from good to great, were servant leaders. He says level 5 leadership. Yeah, they were essentially servant leaders, and they put, they had clear defined, goals, and they worked together, and those they worked with, from assembly line workers, the executive leaders would go down to the assembly line and hang out like absolute equals and comrades, and chit chat and talk and discuss hard things and figure out solutions together, as opposed to this hierarchical dictatorship style of you will do this. It was more of involving people of all levels and taking input from everyone and figuring the best way out, instead of just it was, and they were trying to do the best for their employees. So yeah, anyways, this servant leadership model is essentially helping those in your leadership role, whoever you're around, whoever you come into contact with, become better, become wiser, become freer, become happier, become more autonomous, whatever it is. And that can take a lot of different forms, as you can imagine. And your role and your style would probably be different than mine, right, Eric? Yeah. But that's how it is. Essentially, you're of the mindset that others becoming better people is your top priority. Mm-hmm. And so you work to serve that, and you are their leader, but you're their servant, and that's how you're leading them, is you're helping serve them and help them grow and help them learn and help them experience something in a way that they become a better person, a better employee, a better whatever. And that is your leadership style. And your leadership style is through your role and authority and capacity as a leader, you're choosing to serve.
Yeah. Love it. You mentioned something that brought a thought to mind. I've done a little bit of reading on Toyota. So Toyota is the top manufacturer of automobiles in the world.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I do drive Toyotas.
You do drive a Tundra.
I love Toyotas.
Yeah.
My wife has a 4Runner.
And she used to have a sexy Prius.
Said no one ever. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a huge Toyota fan, but let's be honest with each other. Sexy and Prius don't belong in the same sentence. She'll disagree. She freaking loved that thing, but hideous little cars. Yeah. Okay. Anyways.
So one of the principles that has helped Toyota.
I still can't get that out of my mind.
Sexy Prius, you got it, dude.
I just threw up a little.
Yeah. So one of the principles that's helped Toyota become the top automobile manufacturer in the world is this idea of servant leadership. And one of the critical elements of it that you identified is where the leaders are down at the manufacturing line. Okay. In Toyota, they call it being at the Gemba, where you are, you're not in your corner office and leading from afar. You're not making decisions that are disconnected from the people on the front lines. You are down on the front lines. You're seeing their challenges. You're seeing their successes. You're seeing their struggles. You're seeing what difference can be made. And you're not dictating the decisions. You're not dictating the solutions. Like what you said, it's a co-creation together with the leader and the people on the front lines, where they create solutions together. And the cool thing is that anybody anywhere on the line can stop the whole production. Like, it doesn't require a supervisor to stop. If the most junior person, the newest employee, sees a flaw in something that's happening in the manufacture process, he can redline it. He can stop it and say, this isn't right.
That's right.
And so this culture of everyone's a leader, everyone can make a difference, and even your top executives are down and having touch points with every employee, has created that mindset, that servant leadership mindset throughout that organization. And it's, obviously created a certain result in terms of production and profits, et cetera.
So the development of success, the development of growth is always 100% of the time fundamentally tied to the development of people. Mm-hmm. Always. So no matter how big or small your company is, no matter how big or small your family is, what about your marriage? For those of you that might be struggling with frustration and whatever, are you a servant leader in your marriage? Are you putting the needs of your spouse ahead of yours in a way that you feel like you're not just taking action and checking a box off? We'll get to that. But, your mindset is, I want my marriage to succeed so badly that I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I'm going to serve. I'm going to find out what the needs are of my spouse. And I'm going to serve those such that, like, we develop a stronger, marriage. Company is sometimes a little easier to think about because, we're all so business minded, but the principle applies across the board. But if you're going to develop growth and if you're going to develop success, you have to develop people, right? Like, what if you had a company with the most amazing CEO on the planet, and he or she was able to develop everyone underneath them to be qualified and capable CEOs, from the assembly line workers to the cook in the executive kitchen, if they have one, to whoever. Like, so instead of just having one phenomenal asset, what if there was hundreds of thousands of phenomenal assets in the company? Yeah. I mean, like, so servant leadership is of that mindset. Like, no one's necessarily greater than the other per se. It's not about that. It's just, if you have a leadership role and you have the authority and the capacity to lead other people based on your assignment and your role in the office, your title, whatever it is, do you use that to build other people such that you've got an army of CEOs, or do you suppress, talent, creativity? Do you suppress growth as a person so that you can keep them as an assembly line worker? Heaven forbid, they learn how to, go to college and something like that, because you need your, assembly line workers. Like, are you, I love, I think it was Nucor was this company in Good and Great. And I think they had a policy where they paid for, education of their assembly line workers in this steel manufacturing company. They paid for their kids' education. They had this culture of you might not have gone to college and you're taking this job as a steel worker, but that doesn't matter. We feel that it's important, and we appreciate anyone who works for us. And if they want to send their kids to college, like, we're going to do that, as opposed to, hey, we want to give a free bring your kid to work day so that they can see what they're going to get into later, because we need to cultivate and harvest our new crop of workers, right, or whatever. I mean, it's impressive. Do you put the needs of those others ahead, so much so that you understand that developing them as a person into the best that they can be is how your company will grow? Yeah. That right there, what you described, is the level 5 leader. So the level 5 leader, when he leaves the organization continues to experience that success that he established, because he has done that very thing. He was not afraid of developing the people under him. He had leaders through being a servant leader, or she, it could be a she. He or she has developed the leaders underneath them so that when that leader leaves, they continue to experience that same growth and that same success. That's right. Yeah. I love it. It's beautiful. developing other people.
Yep.
So the how about the mindset, Eric? The service leadership, service as a mindset versus service as an action.
Both have to be present. So we could debate here, what's more important, a service mindset or acting in service? And the answer is yes, right? They both have to be present. And you can see what would happen if you had one and not the other. So if you just had a servant mindset, but really didn't take action on it, well, that might feel good to yourself, but you're really not making a difference. And so, a common thing when somebody's going through a hard time, we'll keep you in our thoughts. We'll keep you in our prayers. And it's one thing to keep someone in your thoughts and prayers, and it's another thing to think, what could I do for that person?
Yeah, so I have a comment here, because I feel like you can't have a service mindset without taking action. You don't truly have a service mindset unless you're out there making things happen and taking action. You're not, you know what I mean? A true service, a servant leader with a service mindset is taking action. But the opposite isn't necessarily true. You can be taking action to check that box, or for public appearance, or serving yourself. Mm-hmm. You're serving yourself, not the others. And so a lot of us will do things sometimes just because we want to feel a certain way about it, or we want to appear a certain way about something, and so we'll do it. Or we think that it might be, advantageous for XYZ reasons, so we're just going to do this. Not because we want to develop that person, not because we truly want to serve that person or that company or that thing. But if you're a servant leader, it's impossible to have a servant mindset without taking action on it.
So in lots of our podcasts, we've talked about counterfeits. So we've discussed lots of powerful principles that really make a difference. And every strength has the potential to be a weakness. And so you have two sides of a coin. You have the strength of it, and then you have the flip side, that is the counterfeit, that can lead you in a non-powerful experience. And servant leadership, being a servant, service is no different. And the counterfeit of that is where you seek to please other people, where, and you seek to please yourself. So like if, you brought up the example with your spouse, how, are you doing everything you can to serve your spouse? And if you have some intentions that are selfish, even though you're doing service, like, you're not a servant leader. The action of service. So like, if you're like, I'm going to do the dishes so that I can get that reward, like you just polluted, you just counterfeited your gift that you gave. Truly to have that intention of, okay, what does my spouse need? What could I do that would truly serve my spouse right now? Now you're in a position of truly serving, of giving that pure service without the corrupt, counterfeit, selfish motives behind it.
And what about the kiss up? The kiss up at work. Right?
Teach me.
They're not serving the leader. They're trying to do little odds and ends, or out of their way to do this and that for the organization or for their boss. Not because they're servant leader, but because they want to make an impression. They don't want to get in trouble, or whatever. It's all about appearance. In other words, again, they're just pleasing and they're serving themselves. It's simple. It's a really simple litmus test. You can look yourself in the mirror. You can just ask yourself the question: Do I genuinely and authentically want to help other people become their best? Or are you threatened by that? Are you intimidated by other people's successes? Are you scared to see others succeed in your failures? Like, some of those things. Like, if you start asking those questions and you get down to the bottom of it, you might realize you're a little bit of a dirtbag in the sense, and we all have a little bit of dirtbag in us, but you might realize, like, hey, I'm not humble enough for this, or I actually have at times, or issue specific, because you might be great servant leader in some areas, and in others you might, struggle with this. But yeah, serving others, developing others, and as your top priority, that's a quality and a characteristic that can be refined over a lifetime, I think.
So you might be asleep to this. You might think yourself as a true servant leader, but be asleep to the fact that there are some selfish motives. So we were just having a conversation the other day My son got married a couple weeks ago.
Yes, he did.
All the wedding gifts. We're opening up gifts, and they're writing down, so-and-so gave this and so-and-so gave that, and they're going to write thank you notes. And someone made the comment, like, what if you didn't write a thank you note? Like, are these people expecting a thank you note? And so this was the conversation, right? We're just talking, and the comment was made that, yeah, there will be some people that give a gift, and if they don't get a thank you note, they will be butthurt. Like, they will be upset and angry. Like, I gave that gift and they didn't even acknowledge it. So if there's any of that in you, like if there's any of some expectation of a return, then you want to check your motives for the things that you're doing. So a lot of people will serve, and want the acknowledgement of, oh, look, so-and-so fed 10,000 people. And if they don't get the acknowledgement, then they're frustrated. Because
look at social media.
Yeah.
I didn't get enough likes for that post. Hey, look at this great thing I just did, and only 2 people liked it, or whatever.
Yeah. And so that's a way where you can actually do a check on yourself if you are more serving people versus pleasing people. Is there an element of, I need acknowledgement, I need to be thanked, I need to be rewarded for my service? Where true service has nothing to do with you. It's totally about, what does that person need, and what can I do for that person that would make the biggest difference? And you're out of the equation. You're out of it.
So I think the thing that will help most of us with this really is humility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there can never be too much of that, right? And I think most of us might struggle with it, particularly if you're any sort of accomplished leader in your company. There's a decent chance that you might struggle a little bit with humility, and on issue specific things, like you might have an endless amount of humility in a certain area, and like absolutely none in another. It just depends. But as you're checking yourself on these issues, just know that being awake to it, being present to the fact that this is what a servant leader is, and am I this way? Do I feel this way? That's how you begin to make those changes. One small decision at a time. You string them all together, and you have a consistent series of great decisions, with the occasional bad one every once in a while. You keep doing better and better, making more and more good decisions. You string them all together, and in a lifetime, you'll look back and see, this servant leadership that you developed. But you can't do that unless you're awake to it. You don't accidentally become a servant leader, and there's very few people that are born, this way. But everyone can be this way,
right?
And this isn't by accident. This is absolutely intentional. Again, go back and listen to the intention podcast, and what are your intentions, and are you acting intentionally? Because you can't unintentionally, do great things.
You bring up a great point. Servant leadership is rooted in intention. And so unless you're really clear on what your intentions are, you're going to be an unintentional servant leader in terms of the difference that you're making in people's lives. So I love your invitation to go back and look at that podcast on intention. What are your intentions? What are your intentions to make a difference? Who are the people in your life that you could make a difference for? Just asking that question on a daily basis. If someone was to ask me, well, how do you do it? What do you do? It's having that mindset. And this was a mindset that wasn't natural for me. It was something that I cultivated over time and still am working on to improve and be better at. But to ask the question, like, who in my world today could I serve? What's something that I could do that would really make a difference? And let me share a couple examples, okay? And one's going to involve you, so
it's terrible.
Hopefully you'll do that. So this was probably seven or 8 years ago. Was building a pool, was teaching at the time, and I needed to go to a plumbing warehouse to pick up pipes for my plumber who's going to be plumbing my pool. And so hooked up the trailer to my truck, drove the truck and trailer to work, and then during my lunch, ran to the warehouse to pick up the pipes, then go back to work to go back home, so that we'd have everything for the plumber the next morning. So lunch comes, I drive there, I get to the warehouse, and they don't have 10-foot pipes. They're out of stock of 10-foot pipes. They only have the 20-foot lengths. And my trailer is a short trailer, and just wasn't wasn't equipped to have 20-foot pipes hanging out. And so lots of flop. You can see the PVC in your mind flopping and bouncing. And when you get that movement, it's going to loosen the ropes, the tie downs that are tying it down. So I tie it all down the best I can and hope for the best.
I see a lawsuit coming.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I get down a mile down the road and things are loosening up in a big way. And I see like, this is unsafe. And so I'm like, I've got to pull over as soon as possible. And I go to pull over and pull into a parking lot, and I lose my load in the street partially, right? And so I've got pipes in the street, and these are heavy pipes. These are 2.5-inch pipes, 20 feet long, and they're hard to manage. They're rough cut. They're not nice cut like you have in Home Depot. And so as I'm manhandling these pipes, it's actually cutting my hands. Like I've got cuts all over my hands, and I get to the point where I'm like, my class is starting. I've got to get back to work to teach, and so I get all the pipes out of the road, get it as secure as I can, drop the trailer there in the parking lot, and drive to teach. So I show up. I'm sweaty. I'm hot. I'm frustrated. And I've got blood on my arms. I've got blood on my white shirt that I'm wearing, and I'm a mess, right? I'm a mess, and I teach the rest of the school day, and then I get a phone call, and it's from one of my best friends, Brandon, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "It's great." Lie.
Right. Yeah. Big fat lie.
He's like, "Really? How's it going?" Like, everything, great to talk. We're just chit chatting. And he's like, I just had an impression. I needed to call you and see how you're doing. And I'm like, well, building my pool. I got a bunch of pipes on the side of the road. And he's like, you know what? I'm like 4 miles away. Why don't you just come meet me there? And he shows up in his truck, and he's got additional tie downs. And anyway, we're able to secure the load in a safe way and able to get me home. How did he know to call me? Like, how did he know to call me? And as busy as he is and all over the place that he is, that he would be just a couple miles away from where my load was dropped and that he could meet me there. He knew it because he had the mindset of a servant leader, and he is open to the possibility that he could receive a gift of inspiration to be able to serve people in his circle of influence that he wants to make a difference for. And he had a thought, I wonder how Eric's doing, and he just acted on that thought, and he picked up his phone and he called, and he was at the right place at the right time to make a huge difference. Now for him, like, he probably doesn't even remember this. And he's like, well, that wasn't a big deal. I just picked up the phone, called you. I had some tie downs in my truck, and I helped you, right? But for me, who had a load of pipes on the side of the road and cuts, and how in the world am I going to get this home? And like, it was the biggest thing in the world for me. Another example involves you. So we just had my son's wedding, like I said, a couple weeks ago. Finished up our backyard in preparation for that. Yep. And the last thing that we had to do was to get a load of rock delivered to spread. So we had 2 truckloads of rock. I only need 1.5 truckloads of rock. And so we overestimated the amount of rock that we need. Get that rock all delivered. And, for a couple days, me and my kids, my wife, we're all throwing rock. And it sucks, right? And I got all the rock finished except for this last pile that, like, what am I going to do with this? Because I have too much rock. And so you gave me a call. Like, hey, how's it going? And you're like, yeah, we'll just we'll just throw this rock. It'll be okay. It was actually,
I think I stopped by.
It was the night before. We had the wedding dinner, the night
Yeah.
before the reception, right? And it was like, yeah, we got everything done except we just have this pile that we don't know what to do with. It's dark. We'll just leave it. And you said, no, we're not going to leave it. Like, we're going to, let's spread that rock in these other places. And so you show up and
Shoveled rock.
we shoveled rock and we got it done. In fact, we got it done like 10 minutes before
That's right.
I shoveled my last scoop of rock, got in the shower, came out, and boom, it was time for that wedding dinner. And that made a huge difference for me because, like, I'm a perfectionist, and my wife and everybody else was telling me, just leave it, it's okay, just leave it, it's okay. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to just leave that big old pile of rock there. And I didn't have the time, and I didn't have the resources, and I didn't have the means to finish it. And you just saying, hey, I'm coming over, I'll be there, I'm bringing my shovel, and we're going to do this. Like, we got it done. And that was a huge service to me. And in your mind, you're like, wow, that probably wasn't much of...
Just shoveling rock.
Just wasn't much of anything at all. But it was a huge service to me. And so those are two examples of where on the servant side, you don't realize the magnitude of the gift that you give. You just see it as a small thing. But on the receiver side, the person who's in need, when you receive that gift, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, that's true. I think all of us have probably been the recipient of somebody's service, right? And that's a good call to action, is to take some time to think about those moments where you might have really, really needed something and somebody came and helped, and what that was like. Because that's who you want to be. You want to be that person who's open to helping other people from an authentic perspective.
Yeah.
So some of the characteristics of leaders who are servant leaders, and we'll just rattle them off a little bit, but they're authentic listeners. They're empathetic. They're persuasive. They have integrity. They're committed. They're humble. They're awake. They're emotionally intelligent. They operate with intention, right? You know, they put the needs of others in front of themselves, and they do that from an authentic and a sincere perspective. And they also do that intentionally. You know, I think there's some people that just might be their default mode because they've probably cultivated and nurtured that characteristic long enough that that's their default mode. I think your dad, you know, I know when he was a younger man, he might not have been that way, but I know by the time he was an older man, he was very much so a servant leader, and a very good one, a very impactful, powerful one. Left
an incredible legacy for me of what really a servant leader is.
Yeah, he authentically put the needs of everyone in front of him, you know. Super cool. Just a good dude. I miss him. But yeah, servant leaders. So the greatest source of acts of service are going to be involved of giving of yourself, right? They're going to involve of giving of yourself. Like, I instantly think of military people and how they, you know, just by voluntarily signing up and giving of their life for 4 to 8 to 10 to 20 years, whatever it is that they're doing, to serve our country and to serve us. Like, that's awesome. You know, servant leadership, you know, in an essence is really kind of displayed there. And then even more magnified for those who fall on that grenade or who take that bullet for their friend, you know, and do it intentionally. And they give their total life for it. I mean, quite literally giving their life. And of course they're not getting anything in return for that. They're dead. Who cares if they get a medal and they're dead? It's not like that, you know, that's not what they're doing it for. They're doing it because they have a sincere love for that person or that organization or that country or whatever, and they're giving their life freely for it. It's powerful to me, and I think of them just right at the top of my head. That's what I think of.
My opinion is that element is what distinguishes our military from the other militaries of the world, right? So our military, they have that servant mindset. Like, you're not, you know, you're not drafted. There's no mandatory military service in our country like in most countries. It's something that you choose to do. It's a gift that you choose to give. And the men and women of our armed services, so grateful for their willingness to give that gift to all of us, to the world.
So let's wrap up with, if unless you have some more thoughts too, but let's wrap up with what servant leadership isn't. Just a brief discussion of the things that it's not. So it's not a dictatorship. It's not authoritarian. It's not controlling.
Has no title.
Has no title. Yeah, it's not controlling. It's not overbearing. It's not overwhelming. It's not intimidating. You know, and the list goes on and on. So think about those things in your life where you may come across that way. You know, just give it up. Like, give it up. You don't have to be that way. You can actually serve other people with an authentic heart and create a powerful impact in your life, in their life, and in the organization for which you're also serving, and or the relationship, like you said, family or marriage applies too. But yeah, it's not those things. So it's not the CEO that's, you know, banging on his desk and yelling at people and throwing things and, you know, whatever. Like he might have a short-term sense of effectiveness, and it is exactly that, a short-term sense of effectiveness. It is not actually effective, and it's by no means sustainable. Yeah. By no means sustainable.
And I know you take us to what service or what a servant leader is not. I'm going to come back to what it is. It really comes back to that humility that we talked about. It really comes back to using the tool of persuasion, not using force, not using control, but using that tool of persuasion
as opposed to coercion. As
opposed to coercion or manipulation. One of my favorite quotes comes from Mark Devine, Unbeatable Mind, former Navy SEAL, right? He says that humility is the litmus test of leadership, whether a person is a master or a charlatan.
Yeah, that's a direct quote. It's awesome.
So humility is the litmus test of leadership, whether a person is a master or a charlatan. You can fake your way in leadership. You can be a self-serving, a pleasing leader, and you can try to fake it. But without that humility, like you're not a true leader in the sense of servant leadership.
And one final note is sometimes the world will confuse this as weak. You know, if you're not loud, if you're not pounding your desk, if you're not, you know, across the board just mean sometimes, then you're weak. That's couldn't be further from
one of the
truth.
Greatest lies.
Yeah, that couldn't be further from the truth. The power in leadership is the ability to influence others and to persuade and to create effective results. You'll do that by serving, by developing people, by building growth and success within your organization, by building growth and success within the people that serve your organization. You do that, you are a powerful and sustaining leader. Yeah. You want to hoot, holler, and rant and yell and scream. You are a short-term sense of effective, but not really effective leader who will be a byline and a side note in history.
And it will be evidenced by the people that follow you. A servant leader will have people that follow him. And it won't be by force. It'll be by persuasion. Yep. And so this month of November is a great time to really focus on, you know, the whole country kind of has this mindset of gratitude and service now the next couple months. Great time to really look at yourself, look at your motives, look at your intentions, and why you do the things that you do, and to create some powerful intentions around what can I do to make a difference in the lives of other people.
Yeah, I love it. Start with yourself. So when you're a leader, you're a personal leader first. You start with your personal space, and you get clear in your intention, you get clear in your commitments, you start making intentional decisions to be a servant leader. Then there's one-on-one leadership with people. It's more of a private leadership. You focus on that level of leadership and how you can influence these people one-on-one. And then there's, of course, more of the public leadership where it's a bigger organization and more in the spotlight. But servant leadership in all three of those levels. Start first, start inward, move outward. You guys got this.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Right. Have a great day.
Have an incredible day. We love the comments, the questions. We also love all the topic suggestions. You guys rock. Have an incredible, awesome day.
We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to the Principles of Epic Growth podcast, your path to epic performance and life with incredible growth.